Welcome back to Soil Sage and Soul Siren, part 2 of our soil and seed. And I'm here with Maurice Small, and my name is Rebecca Reynolds. We are excited to talk about our next big topic. Maurice, what says you?
Well, we had a good first one, and now that we're on part 2, talking about the importance of the multiple layers of seeds and how seeds affect policy and how seeds affect mental health and how seeds affect, community development. It'd be nice to start off with how important policy is. And policy in my work means that farmers gather together and talk about what they need, and they approach the politicians, be it county or city, and eventually we have a representative that goes to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., to talk about the issues that the farmers have. And it could go from seeds to soil to water to land use to fracking to, multiple topics. But getting those multiple layers in front of a politician is very important when it comes to government and seeds as far as what we can plant. What do you say about?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you're opening up that big can that so many of us who are not farmers may have thoughts on, but don't live with every single day. The policy, the runoff, the issues that affect your ability to grow properly, grow safely, and bring things to market productively and for a good price. And I'm thinking, my first question as a non-farmer, but someone who tends to farms and gardens is this happening? And at what level is it happening that governmental agencies are supporting farmers in important ways, especially as it relates to food justice?
Well, a number of the farmers are getting support from the government. Those are the big ag farmers that are doing wheat, corn, soybeans, tobacco, those types of things, commodity crops that we need to have every day, so-called every day. And those farmers get lots of aid, they get lots of loans, they get lots of support, extension agents help them. And those are mostly, the farmers that look like the founding fathers of America. Now, when you look at the other farmers, the farmers that were brought here to farm for free, those farmers have received pretty much zero. It's like point something percent, like 0.9%. They've received something from the government. And the results are these farmers have raised their voices with their congressional people, locally with their county people, and they've asked for more help. They've asked for forgiveness of certain loans because they haven't been able to grow their farm like their counterparts on the other side have. So there's something about putting the seed of justice into farming. And the same thing goes with mental health. What are you seeing with seeds of justice with mental health?
Well, first of all, the seeds of justice seem to be needing first in the hearts of the people who don't understand that there are people who have access to food and soil and others don't. So what am I seeing in the mental health range? With children, what I'm seeing are those that are so malnourished that they cannot focus in the schools, that their go-to response is aggression, because internally they are so angry at their starvation. And when I say starvation, I'm not just talking about the food that they're lacking. I'm talking about just access. I'm talking about leadership. I'm talking about, even sports and their ability to maintain their level in sports because they're just not nourished. I mean, the list goes on in the schools that I work in, especially inner city. It's tragic. They're just trying to keep up with something that they're already so far behind on the curve, which is huge injustice. With you, do you see a mental illness factor in your community based on malnourishment, or what are you recognizing?
we've seen the fact that healthy food doesn't exist unless you work really hard to get it. And we've seen the results of people making poor decisions. And because the people aren't eating fresh and the minerals are deficient in their bodies, they're getting their health, so to speak, from salt and sugar. And
Right.
you know what salt and sugar does? It's the same as that, that bread that's white that becomes a big old ball and you can throw across the street. There's
Right.
nothing in there. It's just empty and deficient. So the people are making empty and deficient decisions. The decisions that are being made oftentimes lead to death, oftentimes death of different types, and oftentimes lead to housing, inequities, and the lenders and the developers need that seed, as you mentioned earlier, in their hearts to think about people's situations as they, raise the rent continually over and over and over again, causing people to move and not have fluidity in the lives of the children that you're seeing in the public school. So it all comes back to the seeds of nutrition, and the seeds of nutrition of the soul and nutrition of the mind. Those two
And
connected
yeah.
lead to the nutrition of the body.
And the nutrition and the soul of our communities, because back to the sugar, when we have diabetes running at the rate it is, where we are setting up more services to do to purify kidneys and such than we are to actually feed people correctly and humanely, again, back to the word justice, to allow minds to grow and think through nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a devastating crisis, and we know this, and there's not a governmental agency that doesn't know it and have the facts to it. And the totally pushing aside this agenda for multiple agendas that serve other non-humane entities is, well, you and I could go on and on about this. So we know that without proper nutrition, which should be the forefront of anything that we're doing with children to begin with, and adults, how are we going to heal populations with poor soil and poor food and no access period? Thoughts on that, Maurice, if we're not breaking through to government entities to support this in profound ways? What are your thoughts on this?
I believe that diversity should be at the forefront of all things. And
Agreed.
Nature is very diverse. The front lawn your neighbor has is not very diverse. It looks great. It's got those fancy lines in it. The guy pays $400 a month to get it to look like that, but there's no diversity there. There's no butterflies there. There's no worms. There's no ladybugs. There's nothing there. As a result, that neighbor is deficient. And oftentimes we need to add some diversity to the mix. We need to add diversity to Congress, add diversity to City Hall, add diversity to our fire departments, add diversity. Where are the African American males in the school system? Where are they?
Agree. Right.
Where are the African American males in the nursing system? Where are they? Where
are they in the political system? Where are they? Right.
Well, there's a lot of politics behind all of it, and talking about diversity, I think, is the first step to addressing some of the issues that you raised. And without diversity, we all perish. And we aren't very diverse in our society, and we aren't very diverse in our nature as far as adhering to what nature did for 10,000 years and adhering to what nature did 500 years ago. Because we've been in this industrial revolution for 200 years, and it's not helped anybody but about 7 dudes. And they aren't very diverse in their 7 dudeness.
And so are we starting with town halls? Are we starting with, creating collaboration? I know in the Cleveland area, there are forums for this. There's City Club, there's, Cleveland community forums. But the question is, are we staying on top of it? Are we creating policies? And are we arm in arm together, that we're not going to let this go by the wayside for the next disaster that's coming up, because it's all a disaster.
I I think Cleveland's doing a wonderful job of creating diversity. I check in quite often, and Cleveland's doing a wonderful job. A number of cities, larger cities, are doing a wonderful job around diversity for food access, for political policy changing, for the people, for composting, things like that. A lot of these major cities are hitting the mark. At the same time, a number of cities that are 75,000 or less are not hitting the mark. There's no diversity. They don't have the funding. They're worried about public transportation. They're worried about their seniors losing their housing. They're worried about the income tax increases. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that's not being addressed in our smaller cities. So I would say the bigger cities are great, but what can we do to do what they did in the 60s, which is visit the South where the issue was and talk about this, Voting Rights Act that you don't, adhere to. So, I think we got to go to the smaller cities and help them. And they in turn are going to help us because they have more land to grow than we do in the cities.
So your feelings are that we go to the smaller cities and start creating networks?
Yes, they already exist. We just have to fine tune them together with the residents of the smaller cities. The networks are already there. We just have to talk.
So does the average person go and seek, how would the average person find those networks? Because I'm not as familiar with them as you are.
Well, there's no major, channel to find out beyond, do you have a cousin in a town that is 65,000 people or less? Okay, go visit your town. If you have the gift of seed saving or planting or water filtration or solar panel installation, if you have these gifts, take them to your cousin's town and see what your cousin and you can work on. And your cousin is probably going to have some gifts to send back with you as well. Bring your cousin to the bigger city. And
so it's grassroots. You're talking
everything's
grassroots.
Always grassroots. Always.
I like that.
Education, medicine, politics, everything is grassroots. Big Wall Street, K Street in DC, all that stuff is not grassroots. That's like 5 dudes that have been here for 300 years doing the same old thing for themselves and their families.
Agree. So Maurice, because we are running out of time, I want to say that the grassroots efforts are within the hands of the average Joe, Jane, and Chuck and Sue and Jamal. And we need to start really putting our arms together and getting focused on what we want to see and starting initiatives. Anything else you want to add to that?
Mental health, spiritual health, and physical health are all tied to diversity in our communities. We can take care of the mentally ill. We don't need, the police to come in and take care of our mentally ill cousins. We can take care of them.
Food plays a part in that. And community plays a part in
everything. Community is everything. Yes.
I love what you're saying, Maurice Small. Thank you so much for chiming in on this part 2. And we will see you all again soon. And thank you from Soil Sage and Soul Siren. Have a great evening.
Rebecca. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.